Hi there, and welcome to the Surviving and Thriving in Residency podcast. I'm Charley Lowry, your host and director of GME Relations at PracticeLink. This show is all about exploring the world of graduate and undergraduate medical education. We'll dive into the real-life experiences, successes, and challenges faced by medical students, residents, and fellows, while also highlighting valuable tools to support you, whether that's financial planning, student aid, or the many free resources provided by PracticeLink. If you're thinking about med school, currently studying, or deep into residency or fellowship, this podcast is here to offer insights and support to make your journey a bit easier than those before you. Welcome back to Surviving and Thriving in Residency, the podcast brought to you by PracticeLink. I'm your host, Charley Lowry, Director of GME Relations at PracticeLink. Today, we're tackling a topic that's top of mind for nearly every medical student and resident: student debt. Specifically, public service loan forgiveness, better known as PSLF. Joining me today is Kevin Porath from SavvyFi, who many call the student loan whisperer. Kevin works with physicians, residents, and other professionals to help them successfully navigate the maze of student debt and, more importantly, reach loan forgiveness. Kevin, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit before we dive in. Kevin, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you became focused on student loan advising and what led you to SavvyFi?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background professionally, I started in HR. I worked in manufacturing organizations, several of them as an HR manager and HR director, and wore all the hats that HR wear, from recruiting, talent acquisition, employee relations, payroll benefits, safety, training, performance management, all the different hats. And so I did that for 25 years. And my wife and I, we have a family of 4 boys. And my oldest was in middle school, getting close to high school, with younger brothers coming behind him. They were really active in activities. And my passion really is in sports, is in coaching. And so I wanted to be more involved. And so fortunately, I was in a position where I could step away, and I started doing some HR consulting. And I got connected with another organization in the same space, helping folks with student loans. And because of my background in payroll and benefits, I started working with them, and the operation really grew. We built a team. We were delivering the services. And I found it really rewarding. I joke all the time when we're talking to organizations. A lot of times we work through the HR departments. And so I tell them, I used to be the HR person that when folks said, "Oh, you have a meeting with Kevin," folks weren't always real excited, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're concerned. They got to go talk to HR, and nobody looks forward to that. And what I really enjoy about this is folks seek us out. They want to talk to us, they want help, and we're able to deliver it. And it's really helpful to their employers as well, because the employees are so grateful that their employer is, looking out for them, cares for them, wants them to get to financial freedom, financial wellness. And so it's just really rewarding, personally as well as professionally. So that's how I got here. I just kind of stumbled into it, but I've really enjoyed it. I learned early in my HR career, kind of through School of Hard Knocks, like most people learn, that benefits are super important. And, this is an opportunity for me to stay in that space and really have significant impact on people personally, as well as just family. Folks oftentimes can't start a family because they're buried with student loans. They want to go back to school again, but they're afraid to take on even more debt. So it really is enjoyable being able to let them know the options are out there, give them a plan that we can work on and see the great outcome.
That's great. So for those new to SavvyFi, what is the company's mission, and how exactly do you work with physicians and other professionals?
Yeah, so SavvyFi is in the space that's, educational assistance in fintech. So it's a financial tech organization, but it's really focused in the education space. So that's why we oftentimes work with residents and others in the healthcare space. Obviously, many healthcare organizations are nonprofit. And obviously, not just residents, not just attendings, but a lot of their staff, nurses, technicians, many of them are burdened with student loan debt. And so we work with a lot of folks in healthcare, and it's not uncommon to deal with single parents who are trying to raise kids and trying to advance their career, grow their career, get to even a different level, a higher level within the healthcare space. And it's just hard to keep up with student loans. The landscape keeps changing. It's changed a lot over the last 8-9 years that I've been doing this. And it's going to continue to change. So it's really become a focal point and a hot topic. And so it's like a pendulum. When I first started doing it, it was incredibly difficult. Nobody was having success. Throughout the Biden-Harris administration, it became really, really easy and streamlined, and a lot of folks have it. And now the pendulum's swinging back the other direction. And so regardless of whether it's easy or tough, folks need help. They need guidance because they can't keep up with the constant changes.
Absolutely. Yes. So let's just start with the basics here. What is public service loan forgiveness and how does it work exactly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's really the foundation of what we do. And the program was actually created because folks saw a shortcoming of staffing in the future as it related to healthcare, teachers, and other public servants, folks that were trying to help others. And they knew that those organizations had a disadvantage because they don't always have the resources that for-profit organizations have. And so this was a program that was intended to be a carrot. And unfortunately, the program had great intentions, but the execution was really, it struggled, and people struggled to understand. And a lot of folks threw their arms up because they didn't get the outcome that they were expecting, thought they did everything that they were supposed to. But the program in and of itself, there are a number of different forgiveness programs, but public service loan forgiveness is by far the most impactful. And the reason for that is, as long as you work for a nonprofit, government, public service type of organization, you have the right loan type, you make qualifying payments. In 10 years, whatever is left over as your balance is forgiven. And so unlike other forgiveness programs, for example, there's a program for teachers called teacher loan forgiveness. That program has a hard cap of either $5,000 or $17,500. Public service loan forgiveness has no cap. We've helped folks get $500,000 in loans forgiven. We've also helped folks get a few thousand in forgiveness. And what we generally tell folks is it doesn't matter whether you get 2,000 or 200,000. When they get that letter, it's like a winning lottery ticket. They're smiling ear to ear. They feel a tremendous sense of relief. It doesn't matter. But really, the key elements are having the right employer, which is a qualifying employer, having the right loan type, and making payments on the right repayment plan. So those are the key, critical elements. And then having the opportunity to have the rest paid for by the government and forgiven. So,
wow. So that kind of ties in with my next question for you. Why is it so important for physicians and other professionals? But it sounds like the no cap definitely comes into play here for residents.
100%. And the residents have a great opportunity because the residents are not making anywhere near their, potential earnings, which they're going to make once they finish the program. And so they have a really outstanding opportunity to make payments at a very low rate compared to what they will make at the end once they become an attending. So that ties into the right repayment plan. So there's income-driven repayment plans. And obviously, when you're a resident, you're not making near the comp that you will once you're an attending. But if you're doing your residency at a nonprofit healthcare organization, which many do, there's an opportunity to get 2, 3, 4 years of payments at a very low payment amount, which gives you credit. And now you're almost halfway to forgiveness. And so when your income jumps and your payment amount jumps, okay, I only have to do this for 5 or 6 more years. And now the rest of my loans are forgiven, and it can be a really significant amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially for, when I think about all the residents I know who are married to other residents. And so they're coming out with twice the debt of just your single person.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point and a really important one, and part of a lot of conversations we have when we're meeting with, whether they're physicians, they're residents, or others, nurses, teachers, whatever it might be, the married filing jointly, married filing separately can have a really significant impact because, again, One of the qualifications is being on this income-driven repayment plan. And when they're talking about and looking at your income-driven, it's your household income. So does your spouse work? What does your spouse make? And also, does your spouse have student loans? If your spouse has a high income but no student loans, well, you have a very large household income and just your loans, your payment's going to be much higher, where in those cases, we're likely going to encourage you to consider married filing separately. Now, we're not tax advisors, and we don't know everything that you and your family have going on. And there might be some really compelling reasons for you to stay married jointly, even though it's going to result in less forgiveness. But that is definitely something that you want to evaluate, and we can put numbers to it that you can take to your tax advisor, and you can say, okay, if we stay married jointly, it's going to mean my monthly payment might be, if I'm a physician, it might be $700-800 more a month, and my forgiveness might be dramatically less, might be hundreds of thousands of dollars less over this 10-year period. Help me understand why I should stay married jointly, why we might not want to consider married separately.
Sure.
And again, we don't have those conversations because we're not the tax advisors, but we can give the numbers so that you can have a really informed and make a good decision once you have the other side of the story from your tax professional.
Physicians, only want to be contacted by recruiters who know your specific professional interests? Simply call and speak with a PracticeLink physician specialist, and we'll help you create your free profile and pair you with only the job opportunities that you're interested in. Visit PracticeLink.com to get started today.
So some residents that I talk to, they do worry that PSLF is going to be eliminated. What can you say about that reality? Should they count on it being eliminated, or what do you think?
Yeah, we get asked that all the time, especially before the last election. There was a lot of concern with that. And at the time, we were telling folks that we were skeptical that it was going to be eliminated. We thought for sure it was still going to stay. We thought it would be more difficult, and it is. That's what we thought. But again, the PSLF program was actually put in place under a Republican administration. It came in place under the Bush administration in the late 2000s. And so there's been bipartisan support. Obviously, the program, there are some elements of the program which people have concerns with, whether it's repayment plans or what's a qualifying employer. And I think there might still be some changes coming on those things. We know for sure there's going to be changes on the payment plans. There may be some tightening of the belt, so to speak, in terms of which employers. But as a whole, the program is not going to go anywhere. And for healthcare in particular, I think it's going to continue to exist. There might be some care organizations, doing some work that some people view as questionable or objectionable. And, that's part of the rulemaking process that's been going on. And that was something that folks had real concern with. So one of the things that came out of the rulemaking that they did late this spring, early this summer, was to develop a process that if an employer somehow lost their eligibility, how could they get back into it? And there were a couple different ways that they could do that. They could wait a really extended period of time, or if they took required actions and maybe stopped doing some things that the government had exception with, those could stop, right? If they stop that, they could become eligible sooner. So those are things that are being talked about, but in terms of the program going away as a whole, I very skeptical. They're not going to ask Kevin. Kevin's not going to get the final word, but we're skeptical that it'll go away. It might morph and change a little bit, but the program, we expect it to be there.
So is it common for a facility to lose their eligibility?
No. There are some that lose it. Obviously, there's organizations that transition from nonprofit to for-profit status, and so there are some that lose it. Aside from that, that is something that's new. And yeah, there should be organizations. If organizations do certain things that jeopardize their nonprofit status, then maybe they should lose. But as a whole, no. I would say that's a 1% type of situation where it's very, very small number of organizations that are impacted.
So how hard is it to achieve Are there ways for it to be more successful for someone?
Yeah, it's been really hard. So historically, the program, the applications that come in for forgiveness, historically 98% have been rejected. And so most of the rejections are for correctable items. And so it's not because the folks shouldn't be eligible for forgiveness. It's just that perhaps they had the wrong loan type, perhaps they had the wrong repayment plan, perhaps there were clerical issues on the forms they submitted. There can be difficulty for sure, but ways to avoid that are do work every year. I tell folks all the time, because I speak from experience, I'm a procrastinator myself. What a lot of folks do is they have intentions. I want to take advantage of this program. It sounds great. I think I'm a good candidate for it. I have a lot of loans and I'm working in nonprofit. And they say, I've been working in nonprofit for about 1.5 years. I got 8.5 more years to go. And I'll revisit this in 5 or 6 years. And that's where the problems start, because if I don't have the right loan type, if I'm not on the right repayment plan, then I'm going to get 6 years down the road. I'm going to start looking at it. I'm going to realize I may have just lost 5 or 6 years. And so none of those payments count. I got to do another 5 or 6 more years than I thought I was going to. And now my forgiveness is either gone away or it's reduced dramatically because I didn't do the work up front. And so what we say is do a little bit of work every year. And generally what we see, and it's gotten better over the last few years where more and more people are in tune, but there's still a lot that changes and folks are busy. We know they're working 8, 10, 12-hour shifts. Some of them are trying to raise families. Some of them are going back to school for more education, and it's hard to keep up with all the rule changes. And there have been a lot of rule changes. And there's been a lot of servicer changes. So when I first started doing this 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, Fed Loan Servicing was the only servicer that did anything with PSLF. Fed Loan Servicing doesn't even exist anymore. And so all the loans moved to Mohila. Then they started moving PSF loans to other servicers, and that doesn't even include the repayment plan changes. So the best thing is, if you're not able to keep up, which most aren't, find a resource, get someone to help. It doesn't have to be significant investment of time, but invest. You probably, if you invest in the first year, an hour of your time talking to someone that knows what they're talking about, getting the right steps, taking the action that's needed, in subsequent years, you probably can get the work done in about 30 to 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's well worth it, right? If you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in loan forgiveness, that investment of, over the course of 10 years, maybe 20 hours a time, maybe probably even less than that. Because if you don't have the time to keep up, it's hard to stay on top of the rule changes. So finding someone that can help can be really helpful. There are people that do it on their own. There's no doubt about it. There's some people that like to do the research and are able to keep up. But if not, don't be hesitant to reach out. There's folks that are willing to help and know what they're doing and can help you in short order.
Yeah, I could see where it would get very frustrating very quickly, So I think just like you say, reach out, get help. If you get frustrated, don't give up. But now, how does it work on the front end? So if you're applying for folks who may be pre-med who are listening, are they receiving any type of counseling up front with their very first loan or no? Is this something that's more thought of after the fact?
Yeah, I know there's a number of medical schools that do some good work and provide some resources and try to do some education. Because we talk to some folks that, are very early in their career and they tell us that there were some resources available to them, and that's great. But yes, in terms of like undergrad folks, no, I don't know, unless they've probably had a family member go through the program. A lot of folks probably don't even know that it exists. Once they start talking to some med schools or get into med school, perhaps they start hearing about it and they, get some research. But that's really an opportunity for where there could be some improvements made, really letting people know. I do think, just in general, right, I think families and students could use more resources up front. in terms of how much. I have a daughter-in-law, or not a daughter-in-law, I have a longtime girlfriend, probably a daughter-in-law in the near future, who's in PT school. And, it's interesting to see my son like asking questions and trying to learn, because it's going to impact them and their plans on, as they start a life together. So there could be a lot more work done up front, a lot more resources, I think, would be really helpful to folks.
Hey residents, ready to land your first job after training? PracticeLink.com can help. Our free resource center has everything to get you started, from CV tips to contract advice. Visit PracticeLink.com's resource center today, and while you're there, create your free account to unlock even more tools for your success.
So how about the most important things a resident or fellow can do today to set themselves up for success with PSLF?
The big ones would be, one, making sure you have the right loan types. So the loan types that you need to have need to be direct loans. And again, only federal loans. If you're taking out private loans, your private loans cannot be forgiven. So if you have loans through SoFi or Sallie Mae or FirstMark, or there's a lot of private servicers, none of those loans can be forgiven. But for those with federal loans, you'll want to make sure those are direct loans. And typically you can see that, right? When you're logging into your account with your servicer, you'll be able to see the loan type, and you'll want to make sure that it says direct. It does not say FFEL, which is another loan type, which though there shouldn't be very many folks at this point in medical school that have FFEL loans. Perkins loans also are not eligible, but they can be through consolidation. So if you have some Perkins loans, you might want to look at doing a direct consolidation to get those into the mix for forgiveness. Parent Plus loans is a really important topic, probably not for residents, but maybe for their parents. We talk to a lot of parents that have taken out Parent Plus loans for their children because they themselves work in a nonprofit and they're trying to help their son or daughter get through med school. And there were some really impactful things that came out of the One Big Beautiful Bill, not in a good way for Parent Plus loans. So Parent Plus loans, if they're done with school and they're maybe working in the residency and your parents have Parent Plus loans, if they have not consolidated them, they need to do that before July of 2026. So again, this would be for the Parent Plus loans to help someone with grad school. Those loans, the Parent Plus loans, have been really impacted with the One Big Beautiful Bill. So they need to consolidate by next July 2026, or they will never be able to get to forgiveness unless they change the rules back to allow it. So there's a really critical element there on the Parent Plus side. But for most residents who have the loans themselves, don't have, their parents didn't take Parent Plus loans, one, make sure you have the right loan type. Two, make sure that you're on an income-driven repayment plan. And if at all possible, if you can afford to make payments, definitely make sure you're in repayment. Don't put your loans into forbearance. Don't let them be in school deferment status. Sometimes loans can get hung up in school deferment, and therefore you're not making payments and you're not getting credit. Make sure your loans are in repayment and you're making those payments if at all possible, because you'll be paying a lot less while you're a resident than you will once you're an attending and have a much greater income. And take advantage of that opportunity to really dramatically increase your forgiveness by having those low payments, which count, as opposed to having them all be once you're an attending.
Okay, it's interesting. As far as deferments go, it seems like it would be very tempting to take a deferment if you could, but definitely not the case for this.
Yeah, and everyone's circumstances are different, right?
Sure.
Some folks might just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know everything that they have going on, but if at all possible, if you can make payments while you're a resident with a much smaller income and a really high balance, you may have a $0 payment, or soon to be a very small payment, maybe even less than $100 going towards your student loans, which is going to count for you as long as you're working for a nonprofit. If you're working for a for-profit, obviously, all of this will not matter if you're working for a for-profit doing your residency. But if you're in a nonprofit, you definitely, if you can make a payment, you should do that.
Can you share some success stories of someone you helped through SavvyFi who achieved loan forgiveness?
We absolutely have helped folks. I was talking to someone just yesterday or the day before, and he's really close. So He's going to reach his 120. This isn't attending, but he's been working, and he's been so nervous that PSLF is going to be, and now as they get closer, they get even more concerned, because I've put in 8-9 years and they're going to pull the rug out right at the last minute. But we're going to be doing his application in November, and he's married. His spouse doesn't work. He has twin boys, which I have twin boys, so we connect on that. He's looking at over $300,000 in loan forgiveness. He's so excited, and he knows how impactful it's going to be for his family. It's going to free them up. He won't have any more payments towards his student loans. And, those are great. It's nice to see that someone who's done everything the right way, who's done the work, who's made the payments, and is that close. And, as a parent myself and has kids, and this is still a relatively young provider. I didn't look at his exact age, but I would guess he's probably in his mid to late 30s. And he's going to not be burdened with $300,000 in student loans. And so, I was meeting with another physician earlier this morning, and she's halfway to forgiveness. She's benefited, as many did during COVID, with a really phenomenal low payment relative to her income and her loan balance. Her loan balance is in 600,000 range, and she's looking at a really steep increase in payments. And so we want to hold that off as long as possible, but she's stuck in SAVE, like a lot of people are, SAVE forbearance. And so just trying to figure out if there's a way we can still get her to forgiveness, because her payment's going to increase dramatically. But we've worked with many physicians over the years, and there are lots of success stories. The attending I was talking about first, who has the twin boys, he has some payments that probably shouldn't be counting, but they're not. And he was like really wound up about it, wanted them. And after talking, he's like, Kevin, hearing you talk about it, it's not worth it. Like, let's just get these last couple payments and let's get it in and get it done. I'm not worried about trying to chase down a couple payments I made 5 years ago for a smaller amount. I want to make these next couple and be done with it. And I told him, look, we've fought for things. I shared with him a story. I worked with a pastor a couple years ago, and she got credit for the church she was working at back to 2018. She had been there since 2016, but for whatever reason, the Department of Education wouldn't count any of the time from 2016 to 2018. And it took us 6 months. And sometimes it's just finding the right person, and it can be hard. They don't make it easy at the servicers or at the Department of Education. And sometimes there's quirky things like that happen, and you have to provide more documentation, and you have to find the right person. And as long as you have the details to make the case, we can get things like that fixed. But it does happen. There are things like that happen, but it's really about making sure year in, year out, you're doing the right things. You have the right loans, you have the right repayment plan, you're certifying your employment. And when folks work with us and we submit that application at the end, they know they're going to be forgiven, because they've seen their count go from 40 to 60 to 80 to 110, 108, whatever it is. And now we're submitting that last one. So they know. And if you do that, you'll be in good standing.
Wow. Well, how about on the flip side? Do you have a cautionary tale of maybe someone who almost missed PSLF because of something that was preventable?
There's definitely some of those, right? And it usually involves the things that we've been talking about. It involves the payment plans, it involves the loan types, and just the thing that I mentioned also as well in terms of the procrastination, right? In waiting and not knowing. There was one I talked to I want to say 30, 60 days ago. I was meeting with someone who had FFEL loans. So this was an older provider. She had been making payments. And during the Biden-Harris administration, there was an opportunity to take those FFEL loans, consolidate them, and then certify the employment and payments that she had made while she had FFEL loans, and those would count. And unfortunately, that window is closed. So there's not an opportunity to help her now. And I told her I really, really wish we'd have connected a year ago, because I could have really helped you. Fortunately for her, she didn't have a tremendous balance, but nonetheless, she had done the work. She had worked in nonprofits. She had made payments. And unfortunately, she hadn't, gotten good advice or, reached out and gotten help from someone in a timely manner. And so unfortunately, there wasn't anything we could do. She's going to have to pay off the remaining portion of her balance. And that's always frustrating, really disappointing, because, the rules have been, the process, the system has been challenging, and it's hard for people to keep up. And unfortunately, she didn't know what she didn't know, and it's going to cost her where she could have saved some more money, which she could have put towards maybe buying a house or saving for retirement or starting a family, whatever it might have been.
Yes, yes. And that's hard. It's always hard, especially when you're seeing your fellow classmates doing so well and maybe, paying their loans off early and getting loan forgiveness, and you're still paying years later. And it's hard to watch. Yeah. Yeah. So how about misconceptions? Are there common misconceptions you hear from residents and early career physicians about loan forgiveness?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of them are like, what I hear is it's really difficult. No one's ever going to get it, right? And I'm here to tell you, we've, in the last couple of years, I've personally been involved and had teams, people working with us, and we've helped over 1,000 people get $55 million in loans forgiven. So people are getting their loans forgiven. So is it challenging? Yes, 100%, to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and things are done timely. So yes, another cautionary thing that we frequently tell folks is, as much as one, everyone likes to do it, and two, it seems to make sense, you really can't compare yourself to your neighbor, right? Or your classmate. And the reason for that is, one, you're taking out different loan balances. Not everybody's taking out the same amount of debt. Two, some folks might be married, some might have kids, some of them may have spouses that have student loans. All of those things impact your payment amounts, and ultimately when you get to forgiveness and how much forgiveness you have. So that is something that we tell folks all the time. Like, hey, I have a coworker, we hired in the same, within a month of each other, and he or she had her loans forgiven, and I still have 2 more years. Okay, well,
and there's a lot of variables.
There's a lot of variables. And so as much as everyone likes to do it, and it might seem easy to do that, you really can't, because there's so many variables that impact it. So that is another, advice that we often give.
Mm-hmm. So there is so much noise out there about this. So physician and trainees can turn to you for reliable help with loan forgiveness. Do you want to share your website or contact information? What's the best first step for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So our organization, SavvyFi, so that's SavvyFi.co. That's our website. On there, there's plenty of ways to get a hold of us, either directly through the website or through email. And what I would also encourage you to do is talk to your employer. Does your employer have resources? Some employers do. And if they don't, perhaps have your employer consider doing it. Let them know how important it is to you and your cohort. Others that are residents, or if you're recently hired and just became attendings, we know that oftentimes happens in the summer. And so you come in with a group of some others. Encourage your employer to do it, because it's even better, right, that your employer provides that service. And it's a great value for the employers, because for them, there's data out there that organizations that make this investment and offer these services to their employees see their employees pay it back in terms of staying with them longer. And because they feel like, hey, my employer's got my back, my employer's looking out for me, my employer cares about me and my financial health, and they want me to get that forgiveness. And so there are, employers out there that do that. So start there. If you find that your employer doesn't have that type of benefit and resource, obviously reach out to us, or encourage, or see if they would reach out to us, because we'd love to work with the entire organization and not just, the one individual. You want to be surrounded with folks that are happy and healthy financially, and the organizations that recognize that and put the resources in place, 100%. They love They love the stories. They love hearing their employees say that, hey, I got my loans forgiven. Thank you so much for making this available to me. The employers also here. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the positive side. There's folks that find themselves in trouble. They end up in delinquency. They end up in default. Right now, the defaults had been turned off, the collections, and they've just recently are turning those back on. There are 5 million borrowers in default right now. And there's many in the credit world that think there may be another 5 million before the end of the year. Folks are really struggling. Most people haven't had to certify their income and recertify their IDRs in a long time, and their wages have grown through COVID and through inflation. Employers have had to keep up with inflation. And so those that are facing, in many cases, really significant increases in their payments, and they just can't make it work. They have house payments or rents, they have car payments. They might have a family member that's going back to school and doesn't have an income, and so they're stuck. And we're able to help them as well. And so from the employer's perspective, we can be that kind of safety net to take care of those folks, but then also be that resource for those that are doing all the work and make sure that they get there and they're not part of that 98% rejection rate. Because oftentimes when people say, I already applied, I got rejected, and we're like, okay, let's take a look. And oftentimes it's, 6 months later, we're celebrating because now we're applying for forgiveness again and we know they're going to get it. So, but yes, those are things they can reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. But if they can get their employer to do it and they don't have to pay for the service, that's even better. So,
oh yeah. And what an absolutely great retention tool for healthcare facilities, right? If your physicians are happy, they're going to stay. So it's a great way for them to retain talent.
And it's super competitive, as we all know. Like they're doing everything they can to find staff. And so anything the easiest way to solve that problem is keep what you have. So.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, let's do a couple of questions here that maybe our audience might ask. But if I were to do a fellowship in a nonprofit hospital, do those years count toward PSLF?
They can. Obviously, we'll have to look at the circumstances, making sure that it meets, but very likely those will count.
Okay. And then what if I change employers halfway through? Do my years still count?
Yes. So that's a great question. You see it all the time. Yes, they can absolutely, as long as you move to another qualifying employer, another eligible employer. Or it's not uncommon, folks start in nonprofit in their residency and maybe their first job. They leave and they move to the for-profit side. They do that for a couple of years and they decide that's not the great fit and they want to go back to the nonprofit. It doesn't have to be continuous. It just needs to be 10 years of payments while working. So it may in the end be a 12-year journey for you and not a 10-year, but because you had 2 years when you were working for profit. Or we have some folks that stop working because they start a family or because they have a sick family member that they have to take care of. And so they step away from the workspace for a year or a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, and then they come back. It does not need to be consecutive. It just needs to be 10 years cumulative.
Okay. And then do forbearance or deferment years count toward PSLF?
That's a tricky one. COVID forbearance counts 100%. They have put in place a buyback provision, and there are some forbearances that can count. Largely, I would say most don't count, but they can count. Depends on the circumstances of the forbearance. So certainly reach out and we can help, or you might talk to others that have some knowledge on that. And that does tie back to what we were talking about before. If you're back in school, but you're able to make a payment, most people don't even know this. You can waive your in-school deferment and you can keep making payments. And if you're able to do that, you should 100% do that. Obviously, some people can't, and that's fine. That's why the program's there. But if you can, that is something that you can do. We oftentimes will, let people know that, and they're like, yeah, I can make a payment, and great. Unfortunately, the process is somewhat automated. When you start another semester, they'll get put back into in-school deferment. So each semester, you got to go back and take that off. But yeah, I would say many forbearances, deferments won't count, but some can. And obviously COVID did for sure. So.
Okay, great. Well, Kevin, this has been incredibly helpful. Before we wrap up, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for physicians starting their loan forgiveness journey?
Get started early. Would definitely be one. Don't wait. And the starting early The most important pieces are, one, do I have the right loan type? Largely, you probably will, but you want to make sure that you want to confirm that all of your loans are eligible. 2, am I on a repayment plan that counts towards forgiveness? And make sure that I'm making payments. If I can be in repayment, don't need that forbearance, don't need that in-school deferment, get into repayment when you're a resident and take advantage of that really high balance with a low earnings relative to what you're going to get once you finish residency. Take advantage of that. Buy some forgiveness months at a much lower rate instead of waiting till you've got that full attending and you're paying much, much more, because that's going to reduce your forgiveness. So it's start as early as you can. It's no different than saving for retirement. Get started early and you'll be surprised how quickly it adds up and how much it results in your forgiveness.
Good deal. Well, thank you again, Kevin. We truly do appreciate your insights.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For our listeners, you can learn more about Kevin and SavvyFi by going to PracticeLink.com. They are in our resource center as a trusted partner. And don't forget, PracticeLink is here to support your career journey too. From free CV reviews and our CV Builder to the Surviving and Thriving in Residency podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, you don't have to just survive in residency, you can thrive.